Hello, children. It's Grandma Carla, and we are reading more of the stories of the Pilgrims. And I am very excited today because we're going to read about a perplexing problem. And I'm reading a book that I haven't read before, so I don't know what the perplexing problem is that is coming up on the Pilgrims' radar here. When they first came to Holland, everything seemed strange to the English children. The bright-colored houses with their floors of blue tile, their strange little fireplaces, and their steep roofs were very different from the homes they had left in England. They had never seen, sorry about that. They had never seen wooden shoes such as the Dutch children wore, the dikes to keep out the sea, the giant windmills, and the canals all seemed odd. Strangest of all was the language. They thought they could never learn it. But after they had lived in Holland a few years, these things did not seem so strange. The little English children began to like the Dutch dress and ways. They liked the canal streets, the whirling windmills, and the Dutch cottages. They liked the pretty bright dresses and the gold cap buttons, which the Dutch girls wore. They sometimes coaxed their mothers to wear pretty lace caps and fine earrings such as their neighbors wore. "It is not right for you to care so much about pretty clothes," said their parents. "Plain caps and dresses are more suitable for pilgrims." These children soon learned the language of Holland and liked it almost as well as their native one. Indeed, some of them liked it better and often spoke Dutch at home instead of English. It was now 11 years since the Pilgrims had come to Holland. In this time, many babies had been born in their new homes. When these little ones began to talk, their parents taught them to speak English. But when they were old enough to play out of doors, they heard Dutch all around them. And when they went to school, they heard nothing but that language. Soon the little ones were speaking Dutch better than English. This was a real sorrow to the Pilgrim fathers and mothers who did not want their children to become Hollanders. They wished them to remember the English language and the English ways. They feared that in a few years, no one could tell their children from those of the Hollanders. The Pilgrims often asked about their old homes in England. Many of them were not so well and strong since they worked in the mills. Worst of all, many of their children had to work there while they were still young. Their rosy cheeks were growing pale and their backs bent. The Pilgrims longed for little farms of their own, where they and their sons could work in the open air as they had done in England, but they were too poor to buy farms in Holland. "We hear so much about the new land across the sea," said John Robinson, their pastor. "A good many Englishmen have gone there and made comfortable homes for themselves. They say it is a great, beautiful country where there is enough land for all. I am told there that the ground is very rich and the crops never fail for want of rain or sunshine," said John Carver. "If we were in America, we could make homes such as we had in England. We could have our own church and bring up our children to love and serve God," said Elder Brewster. Can we go so far away, they thought? Between America and Holland, the sea was very wide. The Pilgrims thought of the pleasant homes and the dear friends that they would leave in Holland. They thought how long it would be before they could have homes as good as those in Leiden. They thought of the long voyage and of the hardships of a new life in a new land. There was not a city, nor a town, nor even a house in the place where they would go. There were no mills where they could buy timber for their cottages. They would have to cut down the trees to make their own lumber. The Indians live in the forest. They are said to be very savage and cruel, said Master Allerton. We would treat them like brothers, and perhaps they would be our friends, answered the pastor. Whenever the Pilgrims met, they talked about going to America. They talked about the broad fields they would own and the cozy homes they would build. Above all, they said, we shall be free. We will build our own church and worship God as the Bible directs. Our children will be healthier, happier, and holier than in this large city. And so the Pilgrims decided to go to America, but they could not all go at once. There would be no houses for them to live in at first, and many were too old or too weak to bear the hardships of starting the new home. It was decided that if the greater number of the Pilgrims went to America, John Robinson would go with them. If fewer went, Elder Brewster would go with them and be their pastor. It was soon learned that most of them could not leave Leiden until later. So Elder Brewster and about 80 of his friends planned to go that summer. Only those who were well and strong were to go in the first ship. Many families would have to be separated for a year or more. Elder Brewster's family was large, and he could not take them all at first. Love and her little brother were too young to be left. Mistress Brewer could not be contented an hour if the wide sea lay between her and her little boys. Jonathan Brewster was a young man now and was working in Leiden. Patience and Fear had grown to be tall girls and could spin and weave, sew and cook almost as well as Miss Brewster herself. So it was arranged that Jonathan would go on with his work in Leiden with his sisters to keep house for him. They all hoped to be able to join the others in America in a year or two. Can you imagine having to split up your family to go to live in a new land? I can't imagine splitting up mine. Let's answer our questions. When the Pilgrims first came to Holland, how did the way of living seem there to them? Living there seemed to them. What was happening to the ways of the English children? The ways that they talked and wanted to dress as they lived in this Dutch country. Where did the English people begin thinking would be a good place to live? And what was the most important reason for moving to this new country? Okay, now tell me, what was the strange, perplexing problem that the Pilgrims had? It wasn't that they didn't have enough to eat or that they were persecuted. It was that their children were becoming too much like the Dutch children who did not know God. And they were being tempted to run after the world in a way that the Pilgrims thought was wrong. And here's a picture of one of the little boys, I guess, and there's maybe his father looking at him and going, you know what? He's becoming very much like a little child of Holland. And they didn't want that to happen. So they moved the second time to America. And also they had a lot of, they had to work in the factories, and the factories and the mills were taking their health. So they wanted to get to a good land where they could farm and be outside and not inside the factories all day long. So the next time we're going to read about the sword of Miles Standish. This is Grandma Carla, and I love you.